So I want to give you an update in Donald Trump's global and tariff trade war. And as you know, he's currently in Europe and saying, hey guys, we've got to deal with Europe. So I want to go over what the details of this stuff are, and let's just jump right in.
The EU deal. Is everyone going to be driving an American car now, and they're going to get rid of all the Mercedes and Porsches and Audis?
Correct. Every single European will be driving an American vehicle. But they are going to be reducing their tariffs. They're going to be accepting aspects of American auto standards. They're going to be reducing their tariffs on all industrial goods shipped by the U.S. So think chemicals, medical devices, et cetera. They're going to be reducing their tariffs on a number of agricultural goods that we make here in America.
So that's what's been going on. This is Jameson Greer, so that's our U.S. trade rep, and they're joking, hey, is everyone in EU going to be driving an American car? And that's the question I posed to you guys all in Europe. Even with this trade deal in place, are you going to buy American goods? Because Trump says, hey, EU is stopping American products from coming, etc. But what I've said all along is that if you really want to sell stuff to the Europeans, you got to make products that they want. So even if, for example, there's no tariffs on, say, American cars, does that mean they're all driving American cars? Maybe not. Maybe Europeans won't give up their Porsches and Audis and Mercedes, etc. So that's the question, and I want to hear from you guys in Europe. Are you going to be all driving American cars now? The actual details of this stuff are still a little bit vague. 15% tariffs on EU goods going into the USA, so more taxes for you guys, for the American consumer, and I don't know why Trumpers are celebrating, yay, I want to pay more sales taxes effectively, right? The tariffs. But they're celebrating it because Donald Trump said that you're all going to get rich. This is some details from the Financial Times. The 15% tariff will cover about 70% of EU exports. So, right, so most of the goods, but not all of them. And that's sort of where it gets fuzzy, like what's going on with aluminum and steel. That might still be at 50%. Could it include, pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, right? That's what it says here. But we're going to get more details as we go along. Also, I've noticed we might have another SHARPIE situation. If you remember the Japan supposed, deal, Trump came in and last minute and just make the numbers bigger because that's what he does. So here in this situation, he was making the 400 billion into 500 billion, and ultimately became 550 billion. And this is something that Trump does quite a bit, is that he'll tell people at the dinner table or the last round of negotiations, like, you just got to make a big round number, because remember, I'm making a TV show, and last week I told him 500, and this week we got to make a bigger number, right? It's like you have to escalate the tension so that the audiences are interested. And so this is actually something that's really interesting in the Korean news. They pointed out that Trump did the same thing with the EU deal. So the same thing that he did the SHARPIE at the last minute in the Japan, did the same thing with the EU, where basically tried to raise all the, or not tried, but did raise all the numbers. You can see the SHARPIE there. It's fascinating because I didn't pick this up in the original broadcast, right? So this is Fox News. You can see it, and you can actually see, if you zoom in, you can actually see the markings on the paper. So yeah, I guess he did mark it up. This was our news. We're talking about military investment, tariffs, and whether or not there's going to be more money coming into the USA. This was the pointing out of the raise. And the thing is, I think it's interesting is, some countries are still negotiating. So China, Korea, and Canada are still under, on talks. We'll see if there's any announcements there. But you can see that's, again, the numbers were increasing. The thing is, though, a lot of these numbers are smoke and mirrors anyway. And so, from the EU perspective, well, we're not going to give you all that money anyway. So sure, we'll give you a bigger number as long as it makes you happy for your TV show. In the U.S. news, this is kind of the stuff that they talk about with Greer, again, our trade rep.
I like all those flags, Mr. Ambassador. Awesome. Could use more here. You have a nice one behind you. A lot of time. But thank you. Thank you for...
That's what they talk about. Ambassador Greer, our trade rep Greer, you got a lot of flags in your background. Man, we need a lot of flags in our office too. Where can we get more flags? This is Trump. He's hanging out with Starmer. We'll see what he has to say.
What's your advice on the small boats crisis in this country? How would you deal with it? What's your advice on dealing with the small boats crisis in this country?
What is it?
The small boats.
It's about the boats coming over the channel, so we're taking a lot of action to stop people coming over the channel who shouldn't be here, stopping them coming in the first place.
Well, look, immigration is a big factor, and I think, frankly, if they're coming from other countries and you don't know who they are, and are they coming from prisons? We have them where they came in from prisons.
So if you just watch that, you saw a live English to English translation for Trump. What did he say? What did he say? Immigrants on boats. Okay. I'll just make something up about, they might be coming from prisons. and that's what Trump does. He just pulls stuff out of his butt, pulls numbers out of his butt, pull stuff out of his butt, like, they must be coming from prisons or something like that. So I just want you guys to see like the reality of this stuff. And the reason why I go through this stuff every day with you is that business, international relations, all this stuff is about relationships. And a big part of the relationships is understanding who you're doing business with, right? Essentially, this is who Trump is. You can see it every day. It's sad when people don't see it, but it is what it is. I just try my best to tell you what's going on. Another headline, actually the euro is going down. Euro suffers steepest one-day drop against the dollar since May after the US-EU trade deal. And essentially, various countries in Europe are saying, I'm not so thrilled about this thing. So for example, this is from Germany. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said on Monday that the tariffs would cause, quote, considerable damage to his country's economy, Europe, and the US itself. Quote, not only will there be higher inflation rate, but will also affect transatlantic trade overall. This result cannot satisfy us, but what was the best result achievable in a given situation. French is what they say over there. The French Prime Minister, Francois Bayrou, says the trade deal marked, quote, a dark day, adding that the EU had, quote, resigned itself into submission. Interesting. Listen to some more from the French news. Kind of interesting here.
How do you see it? Well, first of all, you used the precise term, some say, right? Now, the EU, right? Ursula von der Leyen is the one who sat with Donald Trump at his golf resort and hammered out this deal. The EU is 27 separate members. Each of those 27 members, Mark, has their own divergent economic interests. They are all essentially fighting their own corners. I know, yes, the EU, we know the talk. It's a big single market. The EU in Brussels does make this type of trade policy on behalf of the bloc. Is still subject to approval. Legally, she could have just rammed this through, but she's going to go back and ask for the approval. Now, here's where it gets interesting. You mentioned France. It is France's prime minister who's calling it a dark day for Europe.
Right. And the point is that you still have a lot of countries that, are going to want their say. It's not like just one, EU Commission just come in and just, make everyone do these things. Where's the money going to come from? Which companies are making deals with who? Are consumers really going to buy the American goods? That's why I started the question with you guys. Are y'all going to be driving American cars? And, even Jameson Greer, the American trade ambassador, is even conceding, because he's making a joke. They're all going to be, driving American cars in Europe, but they know it's not going to happen. And that's why a lot of stuff is smoke and mirrors. Let's take a look at this is from Wall Street Journal. Trump's $750 billion EU energy deal collides with market reality. Whoa, what's going on with that? Here's what it says. The commitment appears more aspirational than realistic, analysts said. Purchases of the agreed upon magnitude require a major rearrangement of energy flows, and it isn't clear whether U.S. companies could even export that much. Like, do we even have that much energy to send over to the EU? Private companies, which constitute the majority of Europe's energy importers, would also need to be persuaded to give priority to a political directive over market trends. And again, are you going to play, politics over markets? Can the U.S. even send that much stuff? Does the EU even have that much money, et cetera? Does it even make sense? And then also with the energy thing, which I don't think anyone has mentioned it, but just think of it this way. What do you think will happen to energy prices in the USA if suddenly the USA is sending a whole bunch of energy abroad? Just think about it. Just think logically. That would mean then in USA, supply would go down, less supply, more scarcity, hence your price will go up. That's what I think could be theoretically happening to USA. So, Americans will find out. You're going to pay higher tariffs. 15% on goods in the EU, and maybe possibly higher energy prices due to what Trump is talking about here. Let's see here. This is from ING. They say it's a nice number, but it's just not realistic. You'd essentially have to divert all energy trade. That's just impossible, okay? European officials said Monday that the plan to increase energy purchases isn't legally binding, okay? Not legally binding, and is based on the amounts the bloc thinks it can accommodate. Purchases would also depend in part on U.S. infrastructure capacities, right? Can they even make that much? This is actually coming in from Europe, various leaders, and I'll read it as we go along. It's really interesting, actually. Hungary, Orban, he says, but what I see, and at first glance, is obvious to me. Again, this is Hungary. Is it this non-agreement made by President Donald Trump with Ursula von der Leyen? But Donald Trump ate Ursula von der Leyen for breakfast. That's what happened. In addition, there is the problem with the agreement that the Europeans would bring hundreds of billions of euros of capital to America. Okay. But who? The Commission has no capital. In whose name did the agreement come? The German Chancellor will bring that money. Is it the French president? The Hungarian prime minister will send capital to America. Like, so saying, like, where's this money going to come from? How is this supposed to work? I think that's, this is reasonable. So I don't see that happening, right? This is from Spain here. I value the effort made by the European Commission. I appreciate the constructive and negotiating attitude shown by the president of the European Commission, right? And in any case, I support this trade agreement. But I do so without any enthusiasm, okay? This is France. What troubles us is when we are taxed and in return, talking about tariffs here, American goods are not taxed at all. And so this is where we should consider the deal unbalanced and work towards the next steps. And this is in Germany. The agreement is certainly challenging in terms of the 50% base tariff. But the good thing about it is that it provides certainty. And it is right and important that some sectors have been excluded. And that's where they're going to be fighting over which sectors are going to be excluded. And it lends itself to a whole bunch of bribery, to where if you're a company or whatever, you give, kiss the ring, give money to Trump, put money in Trump's pocket. It's like, oh, I'll give you a special exception. So I think there's going to be a possibility of that. I'll listen to more from Germany. It's kind of interesting what they have to say.
So first of all, it is a good news that the EU and the US have come to an agreement to avert an escalation in the trade conflict, which could have become a real trade war. So that is the good news. German economy can take a breath for now, at least for the time being. Yet we have to be honest that the deal does come at a price, and the price clearly is also at the expense of the German economy.
Right, so you're talking about what's going to happen to the German economy. And this was, every country is going to be affected differently. This was in the Wall Street Journal. Which European countries will be hit hardest by the U.S. tariffs? And we're talking about growth will be going down in Europe due to the tariffs, because the idea was if you're going to tax American consumers and American companies more, essentially what tariffs ends up being, that means prices will be higher and maybe less consumption, and so then growth will be down.
I mean by that, it's not just that the French are known for griping all the time. The thing that they are most worried about is that they are the EU's biggest agricultural producer. Agricultural products are going to be hit potentially hard by this tariff deal, as are, what's the other thing you think of when you think France?
I can make a long list.
Luxury goods. Well, luxury goods, right? Perfumes, cosmetics, that sector too.
Champagne.
Also, wines and spirits. That sector too stands to be hard hit. So one of the reasons beyond the polarization in France and the political landscape being fractured and split every which way is the fact that they do have a valid argument that they could get a raw deal compared to the others. Germany, at least with its cars, that's its biggest export, at least got something locked in that will sort of semi-protect some of its big automakers like Audi, BMW.
So just want to hear you different perspectives, how each country is going to have different interests, different imports, different exports. So there's a lot of different interests going on here. And this idea that, Trump can just strike whatever deal in a couple of days. Sure, if you want to believe it, you can. But it's kind of like believing in Santa Claus. So there's that. If you want to hear some more perspective, Canada and Carney has a very different point of view and a very different trading position. Have a listen to this.
Etc. The United Kingdom, that there are many aspects to these negotiations. We're engaged in them, but the assurance for Canadian business, for Canadians, is we will only sign a deal that's the right deal, that's a good deal for Canada. We're representing Canada, we're standing up for Canada. The United States and Canada can do many good things together. We have done that in the past, we can do more in the future, but on fair terms for our country. So there are similarities, there are differences. One is geographic proximity. Secondly is Europe. I'll give you one example of the difference. Europe in that agreement yesterday made commitments to buy American energy. Europe needs to fully get itself off Russian energy. So they're going to buy American energy to help them do that. America needs Canadian energy. We get a Canadian electricity. The only reason we run, they run a trade deficit with Canada in goods and commodities is because they import around 4 million barrels a day in Canadian energy, as well as that electricity and other.
So Carney seems to be pretty focused on, hey, we were in Canada, we got some cards, USA needs our energy. But in any of these kind of things, the problem is when Trump's orienting the world to trade is all about I win, you lose, it sort of sets up the world in a bad state. You want to figure out situations to where countries, companies and countries, right, form partnerships to where it's win-win. It's mutually beneficial. That's what many countries have been saying. You also want mutual respect, these kind of stuff. But I understand, guys, if you are a Trump fan, you watch Fox News, you watch all the right-wing influencers, they're just going to tell you nonstop that Trump is the greatest business person in the whole world. He's an economic genius. He knows everything. He makes everything better. And you're all going to be rich. And the question I always pose to you with this kind of stuff is, if you're indeed going to all be rich, according to Trump, what job is he giving you? Are you getting like some sort of stimulus check money from all of these tariffs? Is that your plan? Because I promise you, prices are going to go up at Walmart and stuff like that. And chances are there aren't going to be necessarily jobs due to what Trump is doing. Now, there could be, certainly could be. And if there are, we'll talk about it. But I haven't seen anything yet, and I haven't seen any details of this stuff. That's how Trump operates. Take a look at the Fox News, and I want you guys to see the gobbledygook kind of stuff that they say, and you'll understand why it's so difficult to talk to MAGA people about this stuff, because frankly, they don't understand any of these things, and so you have to talk in really simple terms. So watch this.
Officials are describing this EU-US trade deal as the biggest ever. It might only be the biggest ever until a potential US-China deal.
Right, so he has to repeat it twice, because remember, you're talking to an audience that can't maybe hear so good or understand things. Hey guys, it's Donald Trump. He just made the biggest deal ever. And there's someone, at Fox that know him, huh? What's that? What's that? Okay, it's Donald Trump. He just made the biggest deal ever. And when you watch American stuff, I'm a little bit mean here, but if you just open your mind and open, the way you see things and think, hey, there's other places out there in the world other than USA and Foxy land, you'll realize very quickly, wow, some of this Fox News stuff or American stuff is, well, it's American. We'll leave it at that. Let's watch some more what Fox News has to say, though.
Back to you.
Quite the setup.
Peter, are you getting the sense that there's a scramble to be the next one? This was the big one, and I know about China. But are there other countries seemingly lining up to bring it across the finish line before August 1st?
Yes, and the biggest giveaway is that we're not seeing united trade embargoes against the U.S. Yeah. Countries are not trying to meet President Trump's aggressive trade posture with their own aggressive trade posture. Mm-hmm. They are trying to negotiate to make things as good as they can for themselves, and we'll see. And again, the deadline could slide a little bit. It's slid to like August 12th for the Chinese side to make a deal, which is why we get a sense that things are happening there. But because people are actually trying to play by the rules that President Trump is setting for the global economy, it does seem like there's a big rush to get this done by the end of this week.
So if you understand what's going on here, you have to think that, and I'm being a little mean today, but you think like the MAGA and Trump and people who watch this Fox News stuff, you have to talk to them like they're in kindergarten kind of things. So guys, Donald Trump has set the rules, so you have to be good. He wants you to pay higher tariffs, higher taxes, so you should pay it because Donald Trump loves you and cares about you, okay? He's setting the rules, and he's trying to work with the bad guys. The other countries, they're all bad guys, and they're trying to reach Trump's deadline, right? And, well, there might be some countries like maybe China that may be a little bit longer, but don't worry about that. The other countries, they're trying to reach that deadline. And I know, don't worry about Canada or Korea. Don't listen to them. But remember, Trump cares about you, and you're all going to be rich. You're all going to have a job due to Trump. And, that's our dear leader.
Officials are describing this EU-US trade deal as the biggest ever. It might only be the biggest ever until a potential US-China deal.
And it's laughable when you watch this stuff, but I wanted to show you the contrast between, say, what various countries are saying around the world, what's going on in the USA, and also to the realities of this stuff. There are still nothing concrete. It's got to go through various parliaments, various congresses, and just always be careful of the stuff that you hear. I do appreciate your time, everyone. I'd like to hear your thoughts, and I'll catch you all in the next video.